Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. We've got all sorts of interesting things to discuss tonight. I'm joined by Phil Holden, our deputy leader. Welcome, Phil.
Good evening.
We've got all sorts of some things a little bit off the beaten track this evening, so I'm sure you'll find it interesting. But we thought we would start with an organisation that's been in the news, and that is Stonewall, Scotland. So, Phil,
I'll just bring up my share the screen thing on this, I think. Share screen and share. So this is a little bit of an old story, and I've maybe mentioned it before, but it's Stonewall jobs at risk after Trump cuts foreign aid. And it just strikes me as crazy that basically in this article, it's saying that Stonewall has said it's trying to meet the challenges of this new political era after it was reported the LGBTQ plus charity could be forced to cut up to half its staff in the wake of US President Donald Trump's overseas aid freeze. And, it goes on to say that Stonewall has 114 employees. So if it was cutting half of them, so that's like 57 employees. Imagine what we could do as a Scottish family party with 57 employees. So that's a lot of, employees that would be losing their work. But that basically means that it's, complete foreign interference, psychological operation, nation destabilization, in terms of what they're actually doing, because they're, forwarding all these ideologies of, transgenderism and all these kind of things that bring division in a nation. And that's what we've seen. It's divided hospitals, it's divided workplaces, it's divided schools, it's set, men and women against each other in different ways and things like that, and it's something that is sort of destructive to the nation. But it was done as something that was meant to be politically positive. They're talking about this as soft power. And I'm wondering, what are the objectives, behind doing that? And, something that sort of, this is like an anecdote that somebody told me. They were talking about like a gay pride month, and there was a shopkeeper in a shopping centre, and the LGBT people went round saying, can you put these pride things in your window? And the person said that she'd have a think about it, because she didn't want to do it. I think she was a Christian. She thought she didn't want to do it, but she didn't want to say kind of no because it was unpolite. And the person then started to be a bit threatening, saying that, if it's something you're not doing, then we're going to put you in the guide as an LGBT friendly place, kind of thing. So there was a threat behind it, basically. And it seems like there are a lot of these things happening in different places. So the BBC, interestingly, itself had an amazing kind of series a while ago. Oh, I got the wrong one there. Okay. Let's try that again. Let's see. So BBC Sounds did a series that was kind of exposing Stonewall. And it's kind of surprising the BBC would be doing that, and it was basically their Northern Ireland. It was a radio show in Northern Ireland, so not your typical Radio 4 kind of thing. And they did all these like episodes into interference in the political system by Stonewall. And so there's, this one on, gender clinics, Insider Speaks Out. This one, episode 6, is the government too close to Stonewall? Episode 7, lobbying and the law. And how close was Ofcom to Stonewall? Is the BBC too close to Stonewall?
Now, this was an April Fool, Phil. None of us believe this is really the BBC.
This was it's quite old, this one, So it was October 2021. But, that's substantial amount of, and it's really in-depth reporting, just digging into what's happening, and how has, Stonewall got its tentacles into all of these organizations. And the criticism that this podcast was making was basically that the BBC's meant to be politically neutral, but here we have a political organization, which is, a political lobbying organization, and it is creating these kind of standards for companies and for public organizations about how they should be behaving, how they should be speaking on certain issues. And these are politically motivated things. So these organizations can't uphold the neutrality that they're supposed to have. And then as well, the money itself that funds these organizations is coming from government. So the UK government gives lots of money into Stonewall, the Scottish government's councils gives lots of money into it. And so these organizations are basically lobbying themselves. The independence has gone from the BBC and things like that. And the same thing happens in, private companies as well. This is like a private company's website. It says, Stonewall, Europe's leading charity for lesbian, gay and bisexual and trans equality, works with more than 750 organizations to help them create workplaces that are inclusive and welcoming of LGBT people. The Diversity Champions program brings together top employers from across the UK and beyond to promote inclusivity and diversity in the workplace, helping businesses and public services to develop inclusive workplaces and cultures, and ensuring staff can perform to their full potential. And these things are things like having drag queen story time in workplaces, basically getting people to use pronouns to go along with transgenderism as an ideology, and just say that it's fact that, somebody can be trapped inside the wrong body, that a man can become a woman can become a man, and all those kind of things. And to sort of enforce that in the company's kind of disciplinary procedures and things like that, and promotion, opportunities and things like that. But it seems crazy to me that this, goes back to a US non-governmental organization providing such a substantial amount of the funding for it, such that if it cuts its funding, then half of the jobs are at risk. It's complete political interference and undermining of a country and of its moral values and, its political systems and its independent institutions and government and businesses.
Yeah, I think it's bizarre that we didn't know that this was funded from America, funded from a foreign nation. I think that's just a really important thing that we should have known. It's fascinating with the family party that the Scots, Scotland on Sunday are doing an article about buffer zones, including the family party. So their journalist emailed us and said, how are you funded? Tell us about your funding sources. So I replied, joking at first. I said, we're funded by a variety of shadowy American extremist organizations, as well as direct funding from the Russian government. No, just kidding, right? We just get money from our members and supporters. But people are forever saying, where's your money come from? There's something sinister going on. And here you've got just straightforward political interference in another country. And I don't know, I didn't know about it. I didn't realize that America was spending money here. But this is exactly what the UK does in other countries. They export LGBT ideology and abortion and you name it to other countries on the back of aid as well, don't they?
And so if they have these, 114 workers and they're kind of, as it were, infiltrating 750 companies and, all the public institutions as well, that must mean their job is pretty much picking up the phone, cold calling people and saying, there are various regulations about LGBT inclusivity, for schools, for offices, for all of these things. What are you doing about it? Do you know that we have this scheme where we can give you a gold star if you promise to uphold certain standards? We can say that you're champions, And if we say you're champions, you know that you've ticked that regulatory box. And then the same government that's paid to fund the charity sends its regulators round and sees the Stonewall tick there and says, right, we'll not, the BBC thing basically presented this as a racket, as racketeering, because to get that gold star, you have to pay Stonewall lots of money as well, and so they're the ones that can give you the accreditation. And that's the thing that gets you past the inspectors, or, in business, it's the what's it called? Help me out on that one. It's fallen out of favor now.
DEI.
It's DEI. There was another word for it, which is basically for the boards of companies. So BlackRock would get on the board of a company and they'd say, unless you do this for diversity, then we're going to pull investment, basically, or something like that.
Right.
It's got a name that begins with E. I forgot it.
I'm not sure.
And so, it seems like a destabilization. It's what you would define as a psyop, isn't it? The psychological operation where this charity is not funded by people. It's not funded by, LGBT activists. It's not funded by, people who are passionate about these things because they're LGBTQ. The money is coming from governments with a political agenda.
I think it's something this vast staff spends its time doing. That was trying to get me fired a few years ago. Now, which incident was it? There were so many. When I was at Milton Castle School, there were so many incidents. I can't remember, but I'd said something. I can't remember the thing I said. It must have been something about sexuality or whatever. And basically, Stonewall phoned up the headmaster and said, basically, what are you going to do about this person? You need to report to us and tell us how you're going to handle this. Quite sort of intimidating and threatening. That's that.
So bullying thing,
there's your word.
ESG, in environment and social government. And
thank you.
The group that it mentions in this BBC article, they call it the Global Equity Fund, but its sole purpose is to promote LGBT around the globe. But they say as if that's the only issue that equity,
So what's going to happen now is we'll have Donald Trump for 4 years, and then I don't know, maybe another Republican. Then it'll go back to the Democrats, but then this will all be turned on its head.
I don't know. I mean, the issue here is that it's like with your garden that unless you pull up the weeds by the roots, then they grow back again. But what's happening here is that Donald Trump never did this in his first term, was to cut off the funding, and it's they just stopped the foreign aid budget, and then you just watch what dies, and it's like, oh, Stonewall's having to lay off half its people. How are these two things connected? It's and so I think even in my street, I walked down the street the other day. And there's a Tesla car there with the window had been knocked out of it. Don't know if somebody put a brick through the window or something like that, and so there's this fury about what's happening, with this money being taken away from these organizations and things like that. And, but I think a lot of the anger that's come from that is that it's taking away this money really, really hurts, really hurts these causes. It does permanent damage to them, because while that money is being siphoned into them, they can operate like a second government, even when a rival government is in office, or somebody who doesn't agree.
That's a classic mistake of the Conservatives.
Yeah,
isn't it? Labour are clever in that they capture every institution. And then the Conservatives just ignore it and let it carry on. Just to say, anyone out there, if you want certifying for your family friendliness, the Scottish Family Party has a scheme. For a very modest 5-figure sum, we can give you our charter mark, and you can progress through the levels: bronze, silver, gold, if you keep paying enough money. So if
No,
anyone's
more,
interested, do get in touch.
more practically on that, if you're not a member of the Scottish Family Party, then please do sign up, because you see organisations like this, they have, what was it, 114 staff there. What do we have in terms of staff?
About 1.2.
About 1.2. And
paid,
so yeah, and the money for that, it comes from membership basically. And so if you want to see family friendly stuff happening, then, and you're not a member, I encourage you to become a member, because it's not a massive amount a month, but it adds up as we get more and more members, and you're part of a movement.
I second that heartily. Just to say about our policies, our policy document lists a whole string of organisations that we would defund, including Stonewall and LGBT Youth Scotland and the Equality Network and the Scottish Trans Alliance, etc., and a whole range of other ones on other issues as well. So the Family Party has been on this page, forever.
We were the Doge before the Doge.
Yes, the sock puppet charities are doomed when the Scottish Family Party becomes the government. Right, thanks for that. If you want to take that off, Phil?
Yeah, if I can work out a stop screen, there we go.
Right, the next, this was interesting. Where was I? Just on my computer, and an advert came up. Maybe it was on Twitter, actually. I've given up trying to call it X. I think it came up on Twitter, and it says, get your new new relationship, new person to talk to, new source of emotional support. So that, okay, well, that's curious. Never seen anything like that before. So I went through it, and you have to do like a questionnaire to design this person that you wanted.
Yeah.
And I looked it up on Wikipedia to see what it's all about. But the questions is asked about what you want. Do you want to be talking, or do you want to be talking about your feelings, or do you want to have a laugh, or whatever? And I thought a lot of the questions seemed to be hinting at, that the last option would be, or do you want more than this? Which I think a lot of people would think, oh, well, we know what they mean there. This is some sort of sexual content. Looking at Wikipedia, it seems like that's not the primary purpose of it. And it's not like pornographic or anything.
I think it became that kind of thing, or something, along those lines, that basically it was aimed at first at some sort of like companionship thing. And then it became, I think it's the second most popular AI or something. Oh, no, it's character AI, which I think is something similar. It's like the second most popular AI. It might be where Replica comes from. But it is this idea that you can have an, AI girlfriend. I think there was one survey that said that like 50% of people that had one would marry them legally if they could, or something like that.
Yeah. So I went through all the things, choosing, and then it says this at the end, which I think is sort of a little bit sinister, really. It's basically saying real people are rubbish compared to an AI one, compared to Replica. I mean, look at ordinary partner. She looks a little bit miserable. It's probably going to betray you. Not too great at emotional support. Doesn't really focus on you, and doesn't understand you and criticizes you. Whereas Replica, a nice smile there. No betrayal, strong emotional support, focus on you, understands you 100% and never judges you. Now, I would imagine even interacting with a person like that is just unrealistic. It's going to, I think that would undermine someone's capacity for other relationships, because they're coming to expect someone being just so perfect and amenable and supportive and agreeable. That would become addictive in itself, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it's something that's, people have found addictive, and I think it's kind of like a worrying thing for AI, is that you can effectively create whatever your fantasy is, or something like that, of a person, or an AI might be able to work out, what is the perfect thing that would tempt you, or something like that, and then use that to sell you anything, sell you any kind of idea, or so it's a sort of a worrying thing, I think.
Yes. Yeah, so I went through it out of curiosity, but then I got to this bit, and that was the end of the road.
Oh.
So I rejected replica at
Oh,
that point.
that would
I
have
would
been a great
imagine.
scandal, though. Family party leader embezzling family party funds to feed
Uh-huh.
his AI girlfriend.
It was. I thought maybe if you've got someone, like say, I don't know, an older person, and they could genuinely use it as someone to talk to. I'm very uncertain about that. But is there a possibility with these? You could get like younger people who would say strike up what becomes a substitute relationship, and that's then going to deprive them of a real relationship. I think that seems quite possible to me.
I think that's very much what's kind of happening, in terms of, you've got the rise of feminism and things like that, and then this basically gives you the opportunity to sort of have a fake girlfriend that's obsessed with you and just completely says everything that you want her to, and so equally bad in the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Your wish is our command. Let's go on to this. Let's go on to this very topic now. Is it the next one up? Yeah, it is the next one. We'll get there shortly. We're heading into that one. This is just a report in the Scotsman. We've got a bit of media attention for things outside clinics. The Scotsman did a special article clarifying what the law is, and it was a real muddle. And they asked the Scottish government to clarify. And what the Scottish government did, sort of really backed up our position. It's not illegal when the clinic's closed. No one will say it outright, but the Scottish government didn't say anything to contradict us. But then the Scotsman in their article said, the Scottish government say the family party is wrong. And then they gave these quotes, and it didn't show that at all. So I emailed the Scotsman. I asked them to publish a retraction, but they changed the article in any case. I'm not going to bother trying to get a retraction on page 17 next Tuesday or something. But they did change the article, recognizing that it wasn't correct. Just while we're on that, we had our placard stolen, you might remember. And so we did a little crowdfunder that's generated, well, a significant surplus. So I say we'll be able to get more equipment for next time. I've just posted the link on Facebook and YouTube. We're over our what the placards cost and our target, but still, if you want to support these things, then do chip in. That would be great. That's the Scotsman's changed version. Scottish government told the Scotsman the buffer zones were in place and enforceable 24 hours a day, but that doesn't answer the question because when it's closed, no one's there for the purpose of going to the clinic. But right, this is the story of the day, though. Is the lady here? I hadn't heard of this case until today. The lady here is facing the court case for holding a sign that said something like "Here to talk if you want to," something like that. That's it. And then this has been linked, not officially, but I guess some inside information from people within the within the American government. The message seems to be coming out that tariffs on the UK might be dependent on freedom of speech in the UK, and in particular this case. So what's come out is that the US government is watching this case in particular. I think the verdict is expected on Friday, and this will play a part in whether or not tariffs are imposed on UK imports to America. Now, we're talking about the influence through Stonewall from the Democrats and the Republicans in the past, but now this is potentially influence, call it what you like, in totally the other direction. I mean, does it not just seem bizarre that this particular buffer zone case, I mean, it could be like billions of pounds worth of damage to the UK economy, might be hinged on what some probably fairly junior judge decides in a court in Bournemouth on Friday. It just seems bizarre. I mean, could you ever have envisaged a situation like this?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because the law's been enacted in England, hasn't it already? And and so the judges have to kind of follow what the law is. I'm not aware of the details of this case. Do you know much about it?
She just had a placard saying, "Talk to me if you want to."
Yeah.
And the law in England is exactly the same as the law in Scotland, virtually word for word.
Yeah.
Apart from it doesn't have for the purpose of accessing the clinic. So it would apply when a clinic was closed, more likely.
Yeah.
But it's quite bizarre. The thing is, I mean, what does America think the UK government can do? Do they think the UK government's going to interfere in the legal process? You know, give the judge a phone call and say, "Can you let this woman off after all?" I mean, that would be a massive scandal if they did that.
And the other sort of similar one was Keir Starmer, and there's a judge that's basically issued the legal advice saying that that people of different ethnicity should be judged differently when it comes to the law. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and you know, I think Keir Starmer said that doesn't sound right. You know, but the judge is like, well, we're judges, we can do what we like. You know, we can make up this rule, and we're going to.
Now they say that, but the rule, I understand, was formulated maybe even under the Conservative government. Was where this, I'm pretty sure I've read that this idea originally gained traction under the Conservative government and is now coming to fruition with a significant kickback against it. I just think it's almost unbelievable that the buffer zone issue, that in the UK is seen as a fairly minor thing. It's like everyone agrees, apart from a little lunatic fringe who go and stand at abortion clinics. But now it's become a world issue, an international relations issue.
Yeah, I think that's okay. If it's public that this is the case, and it's like, you know, you've got something we want, we've got something you want. If you do this, we'll do that. You know, the way that you behave as a nation depends on what we do. That's kind of okay, but I think it's a bit sort of difficult in this case because the decision rests with a judge, and he may say, she may say, I don't care. I don't care what happens with a free trade deal.
Yeah.
I've just, you know, I'm just pro-choice. So
I mean, basically,
you know,
America's treating Britain the way that Britain would treat, you know, some nation in Africa with a tyrannical authoritarian leader, and they'll say, you know, you're only getting your aid if you uphold human rights or whatever. But
yeah, but we are being
tyrannical.
tyrannical. You know, that is tyrannical what's happening. So it's saying that we'll not be partners with tyranny, basically. So I don't necessarily disagree with the stand that free trade, I think you can link to freedom. That you can say that you know, we won't do trade with countries that are enslaving parts of their population or locking them up in prisons as political prisoners. We don't think we should do free trade with countries where, you know, prisoners are manufacturing goods or something like that. I think that those things might link together, that issue of freedom, that free trade for free people, you know, makes sense.
Okay, so take your pick. Is American interference allowed or not allowed? Because we talked about Stonewall, funding Stonewall, and we're talking about this. I would say it's similar. It's an attempt to influence the values of the
I'd
nation.
say that the difference between the Stonewall thing, and maybe it's not a difference, but the Stonewall things seemed kind of covert in that, yes, you could probably tease it out if you wanted to, but nobody was really reporting on where the funding was coming and what was driving this. Whereas this seems to be open negotiation, unless it's something you're hearing from the background. But the fact that this is in the public domain at the moment, early on in that process, means that it's a message to the whole of the United Kingdom that if you want to interface with the United States, you know, on favourable terms, you've got to be a nation that thinks like us when it comes to freedom, you know, in some sense. And I think that's okay because we kind of expected that of Europe and things like that, that's the basis of like the European Union or something like that, that here are a bunch of countries that think alike, therefore they should bring down some barriers to remove some friction on trade and things like that. So I think where there are common values, there are barriers that you can bring down, because there's safety in doing that, because you can trust each other.
Yeah, I welcome it. I think, and it's just amazing how the buffer zone thing has become such a big story in so many ways. It's very positive. I mentioned our crowdfunder already for other things. Right, we'll. Where should we go to next? Let's go. Let's leave that for the time being. Now, a couple of people have mentioned to me recently. They said I should go and watch Nick Tenkuni, I think his name is, the new UKIP leader. And I've been informed that he's a Christian, and he very much talks about his faith. And so it's been commended to me a couple of times. So I thought I'd go and have a look. So Phil,
are we joining UKIP then? Are we?
Sorry?
Are we joining UKIP?
Watch this and see what you think. Right, here he comes. Note the cross in the background on the wall.
A video where a local in Portsmouth confronts a group of illegal migrants who are stealing and eating koi carp from a public pond in Southsea Rock Gardens.
Oi! Get your fingers out the koi carp pond. What are you doing? What? You trying to eat them? You're eating koi carp out the pond, fella! No! Stop eating my fish!
What on earth has happened to Britain? Why have we let these people into our country? They clearly do not share our values. This is why we will be marching in Portsmouth on Saturday the 15th of March at 1 p.m. in Guildhall Square to demand mass deportations and tell the establishment that we do not want migrants who kill and eat koi carp, swans and seagulls from parks. We do not want migrants who are a danger to our women and children. We do not want migrants who have come to exploit our once great nation. And we do not want Islamists who are here to spread the caliphate. March with us on Saturday to tell the government that enough really does mean enough. We want these people gone.
Oh, was there any instant reactions there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of annoying to have the cross there. Something similar with, like, I think Caroline Lovett, she put the press secretary for the United States, she put something on like Twitter, should I wear my cross kind of thing when I do my press secretary thing. Thinking like, well, I wish you wouldn't swear when you do it, you know? And so yeah, like, I think there's a challenge there, you know, that there's, I think on the right, there's, and I don't know if it's right to say it's the right, you know, but you're finding people that have often what I would say is a cultural sort of Christianity, that they're affiliated with Christianity as a sort of weapon against Islam or something like that. Not necessarily a weapon, but basically, like, you know, that it gives us something to stand against another religion with or something like that. And then on the left, there's a lot of passivity to the important moral issues of our time, you know, abortion, and, you know, LGBT and all of these kind of things. And so it's difficult because I think when you dig into the faith of the people on the right side, often there's not much depth or understanding of the central points of Christianity. It's like a, you know, a flag that you carry.
It's
a tribe
like
thing. Yeah. And there's something interesting in that I'm a Christian, you know, and I believe it's my job to share my faith with people. And I think that among these people, there might be an openness to Christian things. Like, well, you've got the cross there. That's a sign that I could speak to you about Christian things and explain these things to you, and you might listen.
But do you think he's going to be counterproductive? Because people will think, oh, I'm a Christian too. Because I hate immigrants and I want to hold the cross because I don't like, I'm worried about Islam or whatever.
His point is valid that there's immigrants come in and they're eating carp from the pond.
I would challenge that. I don't know that video shows remotely that anyone's eating anything.
Yeah.
And how anyone knows that they're illegal immigrants. That would be
a fair comment to make, that's not a great thing that's happening. Like we have a genuine problem with illegal immigration. I think that nothing much is being done by the parties, including Reform, to sort that out. And so there's a genuine issue there with illegal immigration, and before that, mass migration. And something needs to be done there. And I think people have a valid concern about that. But some of the attitude sort of
it's inflammatory.
Makes me think that that's not going to be productive. And that's the thing on the transgender issue. The result was division. The result was two tribes being set against each other of the what were termed the TERFs and the trans lobbies kind of fighting each other, and it was unnecessary in terms of that if you hadn't kind of made going along with transgenderism mandatory in every business, in every sporting event, in every public toilet and all those kind of things, then you wouldn't have needed that division in society. And so I think there are things that happen that stoke division, and that's not helpful, at a national level, because you don't have a cohesive society.
I always think with immigration, there's an aspect of human nature, the stronger in some people than others, that enjoys having someone or a group to turn against, and to hate them, and it's like football. If you look at football violence, it's that people even though there's no rational reason for it whatsoever, they like a group to turn on, and to be very hostile towards. And I think what we've got there, it's like appealing to that aspect of human nature that they're turning against.
The different countries and different nations and different religions do have different values, that results in statistically different behaviors in different people, and so one of the things like I'm challenged by as a Christian is this, like the commandments that we're currently breaking, and so for on the pro-life case, it's like, don't kill, don't murder kind of thing, but equally the number one thing on that is you shall not have any other gods before me, we sort of assume that pluralism, religious pluralism, is the good position to be in, but that's sort of like a secular view on things, in terms of like the atheist says like all religions have equal value, they're all equally right, by which they mean they're all wrong, or the atheist says that. And says, I appoint myself as the referee between religions, that nobody can know anything about God, really. And so, all of you say things and you believe things, but none of you really know. And so therefore, all religions are equal because they're all equally unknowable things, But I personally don't go along with that, And I think that
nor do Muslims.
When you dig in, no, the Muslims, and when you dig into the religious texts, you have a completely different set of values, and that influences how these different groups behave. And it's almost like there's a discussion that's not allowed to be had in a rational way on these things. And so it ends up with characterization of, either these people are far right and haters of certain people, and and then on the other side, it's sort of like you've got people who are, I guess, like this chap who's out there, sort of aggressive towards another group of people, but that's because you've banned the discussion.
I think that's too generous. I think that's too generous too. Like football hooligans don't try and kill each other because football violence, that their team's been banned or something. I think it's just an aspect of human nature that comes through. And I think there's politically there's some mileage in appealing to that. I think with the issue of Islam, I mean, I've debated Islam and I've got a lot of concerns about Islam and about its fundamental teachings, but I think a lot of Muslims don't. Well, their interpretation of it, it's a complicated issue. But I think with the issue, I want to address it in a way that's realistic about the concerns, but also is aiming for harmony as well. Don't address it in a way that just causes total division and alienation between the groups, because there is significant overlap. So I always think with immigration, with cultural issues, Islam in particular, you need to be thinking about both things at once. Be totally realistic about the problems, but also be aiming to solve them, if you like, with people who are here already, because they're not going to disappear. So you've got to aim to have integration and a harmonious society centered around good values, and at the same time tackle real problems and get a grip on immigration, particularly illegal immigration, which family party policy is very firm on that it's just a crime and you've got to stop it. Simple as that.
And just going into that at the national level. So because we stand as a party at the national level as well, just outline what your sort of thinking would be, supposing that we were in an influential position, which we could be just standing in Scotland, but
but
with regard to illegal immigration.
So like I guess the issue has come up for Farage where he said, well, practically we can't really deport those people who came here illegally, who are already here, but we can put up some sort of, we can say it's bad that new people come. That appears to be the position that he's in at the moment.
I think if people are here criminally, they're breaking the law, then they should have no right to stay. Now, I mean, possible you could have some sort of system where people could apply while they're here, but people are not going to do that because they're living in secret. Another thing with these people, they're here illegally, but they'll be using the NHS. Their kids are in school. So I think there's somebody will get very concerned when you talk about national databases, identity cards, etc. But I think this shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't have people who are here illegally benefiting from the public services of the UK. So basically, I think people who are illegally should be deported. There's no other crime where you say, oh, if it's been a good few years since you committed it, we'll just forget about it and leave it. And as long as that's the case, other people will try to get in, assuming it's going to be okay.
I went to Tesco and outside was somebody wearing a rainbow scarf or something like that. They handed me a leaflet, and the leaflet was, it said, migration is not illegal, and then stop the raids. And, it was saying that raids are happening to remove migrants. And it was sort of this migration is not illegal kind of thing. But of course, illegal immigration is illegal. And I don't know what point they were making. I was thinking, are you saying what migration should not be illegal?
Yeah, they mean we should have open borders. A policy that, as far as I'm aware, no country in the entire world has open borders. Even the countries you might think are the least attractive to anyone to want to go and live in, they don't have open borders. Every country in the world has some policy of controlling who comes into the country.
I kind of wanted to ask, do you lock your flat before you come out, or you just leave the door wide open?
Anyway, do we want a bit more? Do you want to have a listen to Nick Tenconi's Christmas message, or shall we move on? Anyone comments? Do you want to hear a bit more from?
Yeah, let's see where he goes.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Well, we can stop it here and there. Give a wave if you want to. Well, speak up if you want to stop it somewhere. But here we go.
Take this opportunity to wish you and your family a holy and happy Christmas as we celebrate the birth of our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. As we gather with our families, let's spare a thought for those who live in colonised areas, afraid to celebrate due to fear of persecution from their neighbours. Those who can't afford to eat or put on their heating thanks to Turkey's brutal winter fuel policies.
So far? I mean, the family party Christmas message, what we try and do is basically say, okay, let's leave the politics aside for a minute. And let's just get to the heart of what this is all about. And a bit of just to talk about Jesus coming to earth, God coming to earth, Christian message, etc. Whereas he starts with a bit of Christian stuff, then he's straight into. I mean, to be honest, really extreme. The heating allowance thing, they made it means tested. I don't think anyone's freezing to that. Anyway, it seemed a bit hysterical, but anyway, shall we continue?
Spare a thought for homeless Brits as migrants tuck into a roast halal dinner in their hotels. When we say Britain is a Christian country, we mean that our values and shared identity come directly from the Bible's chapters and verses. From these sacred passages, we find our true identity, meaning and purpose. However, through the lustful, gluttonous, prideful and covetous nature of liberalism, we have for too long ignored our true meaning and the orders we are under as fellow Christian men and women in a Christian land. We are not ordered to be tolerant of evil. We are not commanded to be lazy, apathetic, indifferent and risk-adverse. We are not taught to be accepting of Satan's works, false prophets and the destruction of God's land by migration terrorism. We are commanded, however, to be watchful, to be vigilant and to act in accordance with Scripture. Matthew 7 verse 15, which says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." God will do nothing for us which we will not do for ourselves. Ephesians 6 verse 11, which says, "Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes." We must choose God first before anything else. Materialistic atheism, secular practices which encourage individualism and degeneracy, form the wickedness which leads our families and communities to become fractured and divided. When God gave us free will, this wasn't a blank check to do as we pleased. It was a test to see who would act and earn their place and who would fail and disappoint him.
How are we doing there, Phil?
So it's hard. I don't want to don't judge lest you be judged kind of thing. And I find that you know that there's things in terms of tone that I'd find it's kind of like having two pots, one which is you don't like and the other you don't like either. One is too tepid and the other is sort of standing I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, is he not presenting it as it's saying, look, the teaching of the Bible is that my political opponents are evil. That's what the Bible's
like that.
And our job as Christians is to fight against my political opponents, and that's what Christianity is all about.
And the Bible does make that point, but it makes the point that we're all evil. You know, that we all have done wrong. We've all, you know, and I do think there are things we need to stand against and we need to speak up about. But I think that, you know, potentially a big problem would be a bunch of people wielding crosses and another bunch of, you know, activist Muslims fighting in the streets.
Which is sort of what they'd like. It's sort of what it's heading towards.
That's that's something I could see precipitated. And I think it takes something very small to to set that off, where basically you've got two sides trying to work out who's done the worst thing and who deserves the most justice meted out to them. And so I think for me as a Christian, like I believe that the way that peace comes and reconciliation comes is that Jesus bore the punishment for us, that he took the beatings for us. He took the full anger of man upon himself, the full anger of God upon himself. And I think what we're seeing sometimes here is frustrated men that are angry inside, taking out their personal anger on each other, for the problems that they have in their personal lives. And there's a bit of religious clothing on that. But I'm skeptical if the motivation is right.
I say lots of valid points in there, but I say it's presenting Christianity as basically a call to be opposed to the political viewpoints that he's opposed to.
Yeah. So if he were running a church, it wouldn't be the church I'd go to, is my thought. While I would agree with some of the points that he makes, but probably not the way he's making them.
Carry on. Here we go.
Root cause of our collective decline may well be corrupt politicians, the establishment mafia. Yes, this is very true. But somewhere along the line, we chose liberalism over God. We chose sin over grace. We chose to sever our relationship with our Father who art in heaven. He was watching the whole time. I believe in forgiveness and I believe in redemption. But forgiveness and redemption are only for those who feel shame and who are willing to course correct. That means triumphing over pride and entering into humility. It is not too late to save Britain. It is not too late to provide a future for our children and our children's children. And it is not too late to ask for forgiveness. But we must act now. For decades, we've been betrayed by the establishment who have failed in their task to protect our families and keep us safe from existential threats. Now, you will hear strong words from those near power. To those traitors, I say this. If your strength and heart were as strong and fierce as your words, those with murderous intent would not feel free to massacre and sacrifice our Christian brothers and sisters without fear of retaliation. What did you do when our families needed you the most? You did nothing. We need wartime leaders, and those seen cozying up to the establishment must be cast aside as traitors. We must close the borders, detain and deport those who should not be here, begin the process of re-migration. We must reinstall Christianity into the heart of government. The British public deserve no less. God bless.
This is getting more worrying now. And so like the Christmas story is obviously like, Jesus is born into the earth in the humblest and poorest of circumstances, as the meekest and weakest of beings, in the most non-threatening, God is furiously angry at man's sin, at people's sin, of what we've done to each other. And he comes in the most vulnerable way, not to, overthrow the government. Jesus stood on trial and, Pilate's there. Don't you know that I have the power to have you set free or have you crucified? And you'd have no power unless God gave it to you, and he didn't resist him. He stayed there silent. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. And, he didn't open his mouth, as a sheep before the shearer is silent. And so this portraying of Christianity as a need to bring down the treacherous government and those traitors who are working alongside the treacherous government by force if necessary, it doesn't strike me as particularly Christian.
And the message as well was repent and join my side of the political argument.
I mean, the repent stuff is fine, You know,
but didn't it seem to be
that's
political?
What we need. We need
But
to turn away.
Repent from liberalism.
Yeah, I think that we do have to repent of liberalism. You know, I mean, I've been thinking about Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to come out soon, and one of the things in, I don't know, it was Grand Theft Auto 5 or something like that. One of them is set in New York City or Liberty City, and in the heart of the city you've got the Statue of Liberty, but inside the statue is a heart, a beating human heart, and it's in chains. And I thought, what an interesting picture of this,
right.
You know, Liberty City, which is full of vice and, you know, sexual immorality and everyone killing each other, and then the picture at the very heart of the most symbolic thing of that city is a heart which is in chains, you know. And I think that's where liberalism leads you. But the other side of that was self-righteousness. So Jesus was angry with two groups of people. One, the Pharisees, you know, who were the holier than thou, righter than anyone else thought. And the other group were the liberal people, you know, as well. But he said to the Pharisees, you know, don't you know that the sinners and the tax collectors are going into heaven ahead of you, you know? And so, yeah, on every side, people need to repent and need to turn around. And yeah.
My concern with it, as we touched on earlier, is that there is the potential of people who are attracted to Christian values, maybe cultural Christianity. The hope is they will go on to find the heart of Christian faith. But I think a figure like Nick Tenconi is giving the impression that this is the heart of Christianity. Like his sort of brand of politics, that is what it's all about. That's what God is calling you to. That's, you know, to fight the good fight. Repent of your previous political allegiances. Join him fighting the good fight for his particular set of political viewpoints. And I think that's for some people, that's going to make them think, oh, they've come to the end of the road. I've discovered it. I found out what Christianity is all about. And I'm going on the march on Saturday, and so I'm doing my thing. I think that's I think
what I find especially difficult is that if you want to start anything, be it a church, a political movement, or any kind of group, is like, who are you going to attract? And you don't have control over that much who it is who joins to you. If you have like an open policy of just, you know, welcoming people in, which is obviously a Christian thing to do, is to welcome people, you know, and yeah, it makes it incredibly difficult because you've got the media, which is going to categorize you as being racist, xenophobic, anti this, anti that. You've got people who genuinely fulfill some of these things, and if you set up shop and saying I'm doing something new, then people who are discontent from these various parts of the spectrum are going to come and join it, and you'll be characterized as whatever the most extreme.
Yeah. I mean, the Family Party's story is that our membership and support. I said this at a conference, was it last year? Some people who would have views, I mean, to talk bluntly, that would embarrass the Family Party. Either the views they have or the way that they say them, there will be an embarrassment for us and what we're trying to do as a Family Party. But these people have generally drifted away over the last year or two, which we think is part of the maturing process. Right. Do you think Muslims can be integrated into British values and culture? I'll have a go at that one first. I would question the degree to which British society and culture are Christian. I think the percentage of Christians is probably under 10%. Can they be integrated? I think in a lot of cases, yes. I think a lot of Muslims, they're more concerned about, you know, building their business up, getting their kids into a good school, getting their kids off to university to become doctors, buying a bigger house, getting a bigger Mercedes or whatever. And they might go to the mosque on a Friday, but basically they're integrated into the mainstream values and priorities of life in the UK. I think there's an awful lot of Muslims like that. On the other hand, I've had conversations with Muslims in Britain that were extremely concerning. I've spoken to Muslims in Edinburgh, in Edinburgh Central Mosque, who explained to me that there should be the death penalty for converting from Islam or defaming Muhammad. That was at the Explore Islam exhibition in the Fringe. I spoke to a Muslim in Manchester who said basically it's all for democracy under an Islamic supreme leader, like in Iran. So I think that's extremely concerning, people with those views, because those sort of things can't be, you can't sort of compromise on them through the democratic process and it all works out okay. So very serious concerns there, I say, but I think there's a lot of Muslims for whom they're already integrated into the mainstream values, priorities, and lifestyle. Well, lifestyle in terms of the big life decisions. In the case, they might not drink alcohol or whatever, but in terms of what they're aiming for in their life and what they're trying to do, they're already sort of fitting in. And so what do you want to do? You want to, as a Christian, I would like them to all become Christians. As Muslims, they'd like us all to become Muslims. So I'd like them to become Christians. But if they're not going to become Christians, then I would like them to be Muslims who fit in with the best of the value system of our nation. And they will also bring something positive as well to it. Because in terms of social conservatism, most immigrants are reinforcements. They're not invaders, they're reinforcements, that they hold similar values to us in a lot of areas, which is why we're very happy to welcome Muslim supporters. We've got a handful of Muslim members in the family party, and they're very welcome. What would you say, Phil?
Yeah, so like, for us, very close family friend that's Muslim, very much fits into that bracket of, that he's working hard, he's doing a good job at bringing up his family, fantastic, like devoted father, these kind of things. And just as many people would on a census say they're Christian or something like that, and might go to church at Easter or have, some sort of Christian stuff in their life, but it's not a major part of their life. There's many people that would, if they were asked their religion, they'd say that they're Muslim, but it doesn't go much beyond festivals and observing certain times of the year or something like that, but when you sort of question them a bit deeper, they're kind of just unsure on spiritual things and just working through the practical things of life, kind of thing.
They're not plotting the caliphate.
Not plotting the caliphate, not doing any of these things, sort of just getting on with their life. Mm-hmm. There's the folks which are out with the pro-Palestine, movement, calling for the destruction of the Jews and all those kind of things, and the people that I've seen in hustings and things like that, openly supporting Hamas, wanting the Intifada spread to Edinburgh, spread to Scotland, top of the agenda, all these kind of things. And I think for Islam, because you've got the hadiths, there's like discussion in Islam about which ones are strong and which ones are weak hadiths and things like that. And a lot of very extreme stuff is in the hadiths. And so there's potential for groups to really hone in on those things. In terms of, like, I've read through a lot of the Quran, and for the things that I read in there, they didn't sit easily with me as a Christian. I found that there was an awful lot of sort of kind of destruction and violence, that was very different to what I'd say was the character of Jesus, in terms of, if you looked at the life of Jesus, the life of Muhammad, very different things to me. And so I could find it concerning if there was somebody who wanted to live in today's culture and model their life on the things that Muhammad did. That would be concerning to me.
Well, I guess my concern is if you've got the sort of mainstream integrated Muslim family, I still have the concern at the back of the mind that maybe someone in the next generation, someone's going to say to them, look, your family, your mosque, they're a bunch of liberal heretics. They're not taking Islam seriously. They're not living like Muhammad. They're not following the true teachings of Islam. And I would always fear that anyone who's serious about being a Muslim might be vulnerable to that sort of message and think, hey, you know what? You're right. We're not doing what Muhammad did. We're not doing what some of these texts commend. And
I think, one of the big dangers is that the two sides take up their cross and their moon, basically, and you have to decide which side that you're on, and that you have to fight each other, kind of thing.
And that will radicalize Muslims.
And basically people who were kind of moderate, once it's family members and once it's bad things have happened in their extended family, then you've got two sets of people essentially just fighting each other and justifying it by whatever they can use to justify it, and so I think it's really important that match is never struck. And it's worrying with immigration that basically the bigger and bigger the population becomes of people that might be in that section, that when that match is lit, if it's lit, it would be very destructive. And obviously things like the financial situation of the country plays a lot into that, because when the money's gone and the social services have all disappeared and things like that, that's when you get civil unrest and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Right. The Talmud. I've just made a note for myself next week. I will talk about the Talmud a little bit next week. So tune in for that. Right. Just so I do everything that it says on the thing. I went to the Hunterian Museum in Glasgow University a couple of weeks ago. I've never been around the Glasgow University buildings in that way. They're really spectacular, very impressive. But needless to say, the museum was politicized. Right, so you've got here critical race theory, controversial political ideology, white fragility idea there, which I say is a racist sort of idea. This was the real thing I wanted to point out. This was the pièce de résistance. This is a statue of James Watt, the great Scottish inventor. And there was a plaque next to it, which I didn't take a photograph, actually, I should have. And there's a plaque next to it. The plaque next to it failed to mention anything whatsoever about why he was famous. It only said about his links, which to be honest were a little tenuous, with slavery. That was all you got. So you go around the museum and you would think he was there. I don't know. You wouldn't know who he was. Half the university buildings are named after him. But in the museum, he's just a man who had some links somehow or other with slavery. And then this bit was interesting. Now, the story of midwifery, as I understand it, is that for centuries, when a woman was having a baby, basically that the men would disappear and women would be there attending to the birthing mother and would try and help out as best they could. And they had a few lotions and potions they could apply, but basically it was very unscientific. That there was virtually no medical knowledge to help in what could be a very dangerous process at the time. But then what happened is men got on the scene, doctors, people who'd done research and had learnt about medicine, which at that time were men. So men started coming into the process, and this absolutely demolished the death rate for women giving birth. It made it much, much safer, vast improvement in it. As I say, at the time, doctors were basically men, but this was a massive step forward for the safety of women in childbirth. So they've got a little display about the progress of midwifery. So it says at the bottom paragraph here, having a male obstetrician present during the birth of a child quickly became a status symbol for middle and upper class women. The advancements made by these upper class male doctors or man midwives revolutionized midwifery, but it also cemented gender and class imbalances that can still be seen today. I mean, they just can't help themselves. It's going to be about sexism or whatever. It's just a story of doctors coming in and making huge progress, but they've got to see it through that lens. Very frustrating. Another way of seeing that might have been this actually something positive that men did for women. It was a huge step forward. And it helped save the lives of thousands and thousands of women. But no, it's got to be presented as something that caused sexism. I've touched on that topic now. Just before I leave that topic, I went into the Georgian House on Sunday in Edinburgh, National Trust property. Now, the National Trust in England have been hammered for politicization, quite rightly. A lot of controversy. I mean, if you go to their properties, I mean, you're tripping over rainbows all over the place. I mean, it really is bad. I actually phoned National Trust for Scotland. I'm a member. I phoned them up a few years ago. And I said to them, by the way, if I ever see the first hint of this happening in Scotland, then I'm cancelling. And amazingly, for the last few years, I've just seen nothing whatsoever from the National Trust in Scotland until Sunday, when they've got this array of leaflets about the Georgian House, one about Caribbean connections, so race, one about women's history, gender, and one about LGBTQ history. Now, I think with history, like the history of a particular immigrant group, perfectly interested, fine, very, very happy to learn about that, or women or men or whatever. LGBT, I guess if that's promoted as a positive thing, I'm not so happy. But anyway, these are perfectly valid aspects of history that I'd be very happy to learn about, or there'd be a special display. What I object to is the fact that it's obviously politically motivated. It's like they've got all the issues in there. I wondered if they've started to get some government funding, and the government.
It'd be interesting to find out where the funding comes from. With a charity, can you find that out through
you can
information?
Yeah, they must publish accounts. Okay. They'll have a lot of members, and they'll probably have a lot of bequests as well. So there'd be a relatively.
I'm wondering, like, for the specific campaign, if that was motivated by anything or funded by anything.
I am going to write to them or phone them up, or one or the other. I will make contact with them. It's just frustrating. We had some friends with us, so we went along there. I quite often take people there. It's just frustrating to have that there. It's just it's like at the hospital having the big rainbow flag. It's just saying, we just want to make it clear to you that we disagree with you. And before you go and look around our house, you need to know that we think you're wrong in your political opinions. I wandered around the house. If there had been someone I thought I might have had a chance of having a sensible discussion about it, I might have spoken to them. But all the staff looked very, very young. I wasn't very optimistic of having a sensible discussion on this matter. Maybe I would have done. Anyway, so I'll write them a letter. I'll maybe put my letter on social media, and we'll see what they come up with in reply. Part of me thinks I should keep my promise.
Yep.
And stop my membership. But it is really useful. I like going to things. There's all sorts of things I go to quite regularly. So it would be a bit of a blow to pull out, but maybe I'll need to. We shall see.
Maybe you should write them a family leaflet.
Yeah. How about that?
In Scotland. Oh.
It was Mother's Day when we went. I mean, they might have had a display about all the mothers who live there. I mean, a fat chance of that. Right, so thanks everyone for your comments. We've got a few of them in. So we will see you next week. Thanks, Phil, for joining us. I'll tell you what I've forgotten to do. Actually, one last thing that's important. Let me just go back to a green slide that will appear here in a moment. Just before that, I did that as a fun thing. It wasn't for April Fool. I did it just for fun with AI to say if only the police are doing a pro-family car to balance up all the LGBT ones. I thought it was going to break the internet and go viral, but it didn't. So anyway, right, meetings coming up Thursday this week, Kirkcaldy. I'll mention the venue in this because I think the people who complain don't watch the live stream. The Spiral Weave is the venue. That's Kirkcaldy on Thursday. We're in Dundee on Monday evening at the Star and Garter pub. There's a little room at the back, so you'll find us there, Star and Garter in Dundee. We're going to go to the Sandyford Clinic on the 12th of April. and do a little demonstration within the buffer zone because it generates attention and media attention. So we're going to be carrying on that saga. We're giving it a bit of a break, but then coming back there. The time, I think, is going to be 3 till 4 p.m., but we'll confirm that soon. So Sandiford Clinic, 12th of April, that's a Saturday. And then meeting in Stirling on the 7th of May, 7 till 8:30. That's in the Crossed Peels. It's the Wetherspoons in Stirling, the Crossed Peels. So it'd be great to see you at any of those. Do come along. Right, thanks for watching. I will see you next week. Right,
Have a good night.